I'm a graffiti artist, or some might call me a troublemaker. I'm okay with either label. I enjoy spray painting, and I'm pretty good at it. However, the graffiti community can be harsh, and there's no respect among artists. So I've started working in secret, finding quiet spots to create art that won't be seen by others. Old train tracks are a great place to do this, as there are always new trains being left to rust. My friend Lucas likes to join me, even though he's not really into graffiti himself. I appreciate his company, as some people don't understand the value of a good friend. We found ourselves smoking and walking along some old train tracks I discovered on Google Maps. It was around 10 p.m., and we finished a joint and chatted as we strolled alongside the rusty freight train. Surprisingly, there wasn't a single tag on the entire train. It must have been recently moved there. I thought I'd get to paint first on such a great surface. I handed Lucas a can to play with, and I started working on my art. About 5 minutes later, I finished my first tag and admired it before moving on to the next train car. After 15 minutes and using 2 paint cans, I had 3 good tags up, and I was pretty proud of how they looked together. Sorry if this offends anyone, but I tend to throw away my empty cans wherever they run out, so I toss them back the way we came, enjoying the satisfying sound of the ball bearings bouncing around inside the empty can. Then, I caught up with Lucas. Lucas had already rolled and lit another joint, not seeming to care about the pain I had given him. To explain, I'm not a big fan of smoking because it usually gives me really bad anxiety, about 90% of the time. Looking back, smoking 2 joints with Lucas was probably a bad idea, especially since we were doing something illegal, which was already making me nervous. But I smoked the second joint anyway, thinking I'd be fine. As soon as we finished, we heard a muffled clang from somewhere behind us. It was loud and clear in the night air. Lucas and I froze, staring into the darkness. I could feel sweat forming on my neck as adrenaline started pumping through me. I couldn't tell if the noise came from outside the train or from inside one of the cars. Either option was terrifying. We waited in silence for 3 minutes, but nothing happened. That's when I pulled out my phone and started recording a video. "What the heck was that?" I exclaimed. "You heard that, right?" I asked Lucas. But before we could react, someone threw one of my empty paint cans at us and started chasing us, shouting. The video shows the commotion, but you can't see the paint can clearly. As we ran away, the person behind us yelled, "You better not trip, boy." Then, a gunshot rang out, making Lucas almost trip and fall. I was so startled that I accidentally stopped recording the video. We kept running until we reached a main road and didn't stop until we were far away. I was terrified, and being stoned made it worse. My hands were shaking, and so were Lucas's. We drove home in silence, still trying to process what had just happened. What could I do? Call the police? I was breaking the law too, so that wasn't an option. But the story doesn't end there. I actually went back to those tracks a few weeks later, during the day, and with my trusty Glock 17 gun. To my surprise, the train was still there, but something was different. In the spots where my tags had been, someone had covered them with ugly red paint. I kept investigating and found a train car with its door open. Inside, it was weird. The car was empty except for a chair in the middle, ropes and chains. Some ropes were wrapped around the chair legs, and others were on the floor. The strangest part was the smell. The whole car smelled like bleach. If you closed your eyes, you would have thought you were in a cleaning supply closet. The smell of bleach was overwhelming. It was like the whole train car had been doused in it. I tried to take a picture of the scene, but then I thought I heard a metal clang further down the train. I wasn't sure if I imagined it, but I wasn't taking any chances. That was enough for me, and I quickly left. I've told many people this story, but none of them can make sense of the person's actions. I doubt a homeless person would have a gun, but I can't understand why someone else would react so aggressively and cover up my tags. The most disturbing part was the chair in the middle of the train car. I really want to go back and take a picture of what I saw, but I haven't gone back to those tracks yet. I'm still unsure if the person was trying to kill us or just scare us. Sometimes, late at night, I can still hear the gunshot ringing in my ears. Second story. It's early July, and this story happened at the beginning of summer. I usually try to stay in my college town or travel to Europe during summer, but that wasn't possible this time. I found myself returning home reluctantly at the beginning of summer. I just had to make it through 1 week, and then I'd be on a plane to Germany. I didn't feel like seeing my old friends, but I didn't want to stay home either. So I spent my days hiking, watching movies, or driving around aimlessly. On my last day home, I was getting bored and wanted to do something exciting. I decided to train hop, something I used to do with my friends. I drove to a secluded set of tracks surrounded by trees and knew freight trains would pass through. I parked my car and walked to the tracks, planning to hop on a train, go through the tunnel, and then walk back to my car. I walked along the tracks and waited for a train to pass. It was around 2 or 3 p.m. After 10 minutes of walking, I felt the familiar vibration in the rails, so I quickly moved to the side to stay out of sight. The train passed, and I waited for a good number of cars to go by before emerging from my hiding spot. I chose a car that looked easy to climb onto and started jogging alongside the train, just like I had done many times before. Once I was confident, I grabbed the ladder and swung myself up. It was pretty easy, as the train wasn't going very fast. As my part of the train was about to enter the tunnel, I saw a strange flash of light ahead. I assumed it was a spark from the train, but I had never seen anything like it before. I thought maybe there wasn't a loose wire or something dangerous in the tunnel, but it was too late to jump off. The train started picking up speed, and I closed my eyes as the adrenaline rush started coming on. Just then, I felt a hand reach out from the darkness and grab my leg. I lost my footing and almost fell, but my hands were gripping the train tightly. I screamed and kicked, but the train sped by before I could make contact with anything. Before I could even process what just happened, I felt another hand slap against my leg. I screamed again and scrambled up the ladder, hoping to get out of reach. My heart was racing. What just happened? The train exited the tunnel, and I jumped off without thinking. I waited for the train to pass and watched it chug over the bridge. I remember pacing back and forth in the clearing, trying to make sense of what just happened. Were there really people in the tunnel? What were they doing there? Why did they try to drag me down? All these thoughts were racing through my mind when I realized I had to go back through the tunnel to get to my car. There was no other option. I couldn't walk across the bridge without risking my life, and I couldn't call someone to rescue me. But I wasn't sure if anyone could help me, and I couldn't call the police since I was breaking the law by being there. I had no choice, so I picked up a rock and started walking through the tunnel. I knew there were at least 2 people in there, but there could have been more. I got halfway through the tunnel when I heard a faint clicking sound, like someone clicking their tongue or a machine making a noise. I froze, thinking that continuing through the tunnel could be deadly. I felt a surge of confidence, pulled out my phone, and threatened, "Stay back or I'll shoot." My words echoed off the tunnel walls. There was a moment of silence, and the clicking stopped. I was bluffing about having a gun, but I thought it was better to bluff than walk in silence. Then I played a gunshot sound effect from YouTube on my phone, hoping whoever was in there would believe it. The sound was louder than I expected, and with the echo, I prayed that they would think it was real and leave me alone. Without waiting another second, I sprinted through the darkness, ready for a fight. I didn't stop running until I reached the other side of the tunnel. Miraculously, no one tried to grab me. When I looked back, I saw two silhouettes standing on the tracks, facing me. That was it for me. I turned to leave, but as I was jogging away, I heard a blood-curdling screech from the tunnel. It sounded like a human, but not normal. I don't plan on train hopping again. Third story. Working in the New York City subway system can be scary. I've been an MTA worker for 7 years, and nothing surprises me anymore. But there's one story that stands out. It happened 2 years into my job, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was doing routine maintenance in High Street Station in Brooklyn. The platform was empty and eerie, which was strange since subway stations are usually crowded. I hadn't seen anyone in hours, and it was silent except for the buzz of the lights and passing trains. Suddenly, I heard a loud clang from down the track. It startled me so badly that I dropped my mop. The sound was like a rock being dropped on a metal rail. I stopped what I was doing and listened for other noises. After a while, I thought the noise was probably caused by an animal or a piece of cement falling. The stations were old, so it seemed possible. I went back to work, not thinking much about it. But 10 minutes later, the same loud sound happened again, twice as loud this time. I was concerned and a little scared. Could 2 chunks of the ceiling really have fallen in just 10 minutes? I put down my supplies and walked to the tunnel entrance, trying to be quiet. I looked into the darkness but couldn't see anything. I thought about calling out into the tunnel but decided against it. I still thought it was probably nothing, but I was cautious after the initial fear wore off. I was confused and tried to think of explanations for the loud sounds. But when I heard a child's voice calling for help from inside the tunnel, I felt a chill. The child sounded distressed, and I immediately stopped working. I hesitated for a few seconds, but my conscience wouldn't let me ignore a child in need. I walked down the steps onto the tracks, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. I shouted into the tunnel, asking the kid if he was okay, but there was no response. That's weird, I thought, starting to feel nervous. Just then, the kid's voice rang out again, repeating his call for help. I yelled back to the kid, asking if he could hear me, and he said yes. I asked where he was, and he said, "In front of you, just keep walking." I didn't want to go further, but I couldn't leave a helpless kid alone on the tracks. As I walked, I asked the kid what was wrong, and he just said, "Keep walking." I didn't like this, and my eyes finally adjusted to the darkness. I saw a shadow that looked like a kid, but also a taller shadow, obviously an adult. I was scared and slowly turned around, making my way back to the platform. Luckily, I wasn't chased. The kid shouted, "Wait, where are you going?" But I didn't stick around. I called the police, and they swarmed the platform, searching for something. After 20 minutes, they found a single kid's shoe in the tunnel, which suggested a struggle. After hours of searching, they couldn't find anything else, but they said they'd call if anything came up. I think some psycho kidnapped a child and forced them to yell for help to lure someone into a trap. I can't think of any other explanation, and if I'm right, I can only imagine what that kid is going through.